Welcome to the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. This is episode 89, and I'm Jacob. Hey, everybody. This week on the podcast, Charlie's got an interview with David. David has an interesting story about his addiction to Kratom and his ultimate recovery from Kratom addiction. I hope you enjoy the interview, which is coming up just in a little bit. So this week for the intro, we had some scheduling challenges, and it's been a while since we've done a solo intro. I decided to go ahead and take one for the team and record an intro segment for this week around navigating spaces and rituals of recovery. The really cool thing about getting sober in 2024, or if you're in long-term recovery, exploring different options that are available to you for recovery from Kratom addiction, is that there are so many options. There are Kratom-specific meetings. There are traditional 12-step meetings through places like Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. There are cognitive behavioral-based therapy-type meetings, smart recovery, and there are even things that are based more on like Eastern religions and Eastern philosophy like Dharma recovery, and many other flavors and varieties and different local options and groups that you could go to. It's really great that we have all these options available to us. The challenge, though, is with so many options and with some differences of opinion regarding certain things and certain tools that can be used for one's recovery, it can be challenging to navigate these spaces and to find the right home for yourself. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that because when I first got sober again from Kratom, I was having a hard time really finding like a home. I had always gone to a local smart recovery group, and I even went there for probably the first year that I was using Kratom, and then the extract addiction took over and I stopped going. But if you want to hear more about that, you can go back and listen to episode 13 where I talk all about it. But I stopped doing that, and then when I really got sober and ended up getting treatment, found myself at odds in some spaces that I used to go in, really because just some particularly Kratom recovery spaces can be very, I'll just say it, anti-medication assisted treatment. Not everybody, usually not the moderators, but usually there can be a vibe in some spaces where it's hard to talk about that, and there's a lot of sometimes really negative and misinformation. So I didn't really know that. I had experience with all different kinds of addiction in my past, but I never had been on medicated assisted treatment before. When I was addicted to opiates, I was able to cold turkey most of the times that I ended up physically dependent. And with alcohol, it was a different animal. But with Kratom, I won't get into it, but all the different relapse and withdrawal cycles and then all that leading me to get on medicated assisted treatment. I just didn't know that there was this controversy around it. I just never really thought about it. I had known about Suboxone. I have some family members that also unfortunately suffer from addiction and have a family member that's been on it long term who's completely turned their life around. So I guess I maybe had a different kind of opinion of it based on that. But anyways, it was just hard to know like where to go at first and where to post and where to best get support. But eventually I found my way and found the right spaces for me. And the cool thing is there's even groups for Kratom specific recovery if you're on medicated assisted treatment or if you're dead set against it and don't really want to have any discussion about it. There's groups like that too. So there's all this spectrum that will work for whatever works for you because we're all different. And this is not an endorsement or to say that anybody's bad experience with medicated assisted treatment is invalid. It's most certainly valid. So I don't mean to stir up any controversy on this topic. It's just for me, that was my experience. But a couple things and tips, I think, is what I really wanted to get to with this intro. So the first thing is try out different options. There are so many different things. So if you go to a meeting and you don't like it, don't write off all meetings as bad. If you go to therapy and the therapist, you just don't have a good repertoire or vibe or rapport with, try another one. There are so many options. Explore your options and don't limit yourself. And don't feel like you have to be limited by one particular option. The second thing is you don't have to adhere to everything everybody's telling you in whatever program you're in. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I think if the 12 steps work for you and or if smart recovery works for you and you want to follow all of that by the book, do it. I think that's a great thing and probably the best way to do it. But if, for example, some things don't work for you, I know sometimes people have problems with the higher power thing. There's ways you can work around that. You don't have to be held back because of something that feels like it doesn't necessarily align with your belief system or align with what you think is correct. Take what you think is good from various recovery programs and leave what you think isn't and make it your own. I would say the third tip is don't quit quitting. We say this all the time, but really just don't give up. It can be hard to skip a meeting or not go because you got to pick up the kids after work and your boss told you have to do this by the morning and then you got all this other stuff to do and you've been putting off that chore that you said you were going to do for 3 weeks. It's real easy to just skip out on meetings or not make it to the thing you said you were going to do with your sober friend or whatever it is. If it's recovery related, you do have to prioritize it because without doing that, you are definitely putting yourself at risk to relapse. That's the biggest, or it's not, I don't know if it is the biggest, but for me and for a lot of people, as soon as we let our guard down and we start letting those recovery rituals slip, that's when things tend to go off the rails. So those are my 3 big tips. Search around for the program that's best for you. Take the good, leave the bad for your individual needs, and make your own values and program system about what recovery means for you. And just don't give up and just continue to move forward and find the right thing that's going to work for you so you can get past this kratom addiction, enter that remission phase of the disease of addiction, and work on healing yourself and making yourself a better person and individual in general. So with that, I will let you all get on to tonight's interview with David.
Hello, this is Charlie, and this is the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. I'm sitting down with one of the first people who ever emailed me at the beginning of the podcast, all the way back in July of 2023, and it's Dave from Ireland, and now California.
How are you? I didn't realize I was your first stalker. That's great. The first stalker that you had since you become famous. Look at me.
We started at the end of April, and it was really quiet in May and June. And then in July, I started getting like an email a week. And that first month, it was you, Jacob, who has been on the podcast as a host. Krista emailed me that month too. Yeah. So you're one of the original gangsters.
Nice. That's great. And look at this, 14 months later. Boom.
Yes.
In the hot seat.
And in your original email, you said you wanted to be a guest. So I'm sorry it took me 14 months to get my stuff together.
Oh, that's right. I said, but I think I was worried that I was going to relapse. So I was like, let me get 30 or 60 days or something like that first. It's funny though. I was just going back over emails to get some history about using and all that. And you forwarded me that email back in the day. God, it seems so long ago.
Why don't you introduce yourself and let people know who you are?
So, David, I grew up in Dublin, in Ireland. Mom is from the farming community in the west coast of Ireland. Dad's from Dublin. And I have 3 younger sisters, and they're all still living in Dublin, all within stone's throw of my mom and dad's house. They were still happy and healthy and alive and kicking. My dad does a lot of kayaking, sea kayaking. So he drives my mom out there. My mom doesn't drive a car, so she cycles everywhere. And it's a super close family. We used to spend like summers in the farm down in my mom's farm down in Limerick. chasing cattle. And then I moved to California. Never been to the US, travel all around Europe and Asia. No real inkling to come to the US, but I met a girl in a bank I was working from San Francisco, and she convinced me. She dragged me over here, kicking and screaming. And that was 2003. And then I've called it home ever since. And so I get back about once a year to see my family. So I'm going back actually on this 18th. So my dad's turned 74. And so we're doing a sea kayaking trip around Sardinia. So 5 days, a few different islands off the coast of Sardinia. And so I still work in commercial banking. It's a little bit about me. I played soccer for years growing up. Soccer, football, we call it. Ever since I could kick a ball. And funnily enough, when I moved here to the US, we started playing co-ed soccer, which wasn't a thing at home. So I had a few different teams I was playing for, and I was actually playing a football game where I ruptured my ACL, my cruciate ligament one day, playing the game, just heard a pop. And so I went in to have surgery on that and came out and they stopped. This is probably 2012, maybe. So they stopped me up with painkillers back then, right? Because that was what you do. I didn't use them, but it sat in my closet. Did all the rehab, started running again, ran a couple of half marathons, back doing triathlons, fit as a fiddle, back playing football again, and boom, ruptured my ACL again. Same leg, same knee. And it took about a year, 9 months to get back together. So fucking annoying. Excuse my language. But the second time I did it, gave me all the painkillers again. And that was the introduction to opiates for me. Because I was bored. I knew the rehab that was going to come. I knew how long I'd be out. I knew I'd be on a brace, on crutches, the whole shebang. I remember taking the pain meds, not for pain, for pleasure. That was a kind of a turning point for me. Took them for pleasure, took them for kind of boredom, and also helped me not drink as much as well. But it was when they ran out, and funny, and I was looking back over just dates and trying to patch it all together in my head because it's been a while. And so they ran out, and I used to go online and order this Solpadeine, which is like a kind of a codeine mix from the UK, and they'd send it out to me in the mail. So I used to get that as a kind of a step down, and then that ran out, and that's when I found Kratom, 2014. Probably
10 years ago.
10 years ago. Found Kratom, and I was like, it was great. Took it for the first time. I think maybe I took too much for the first time. I only got a little bit sick. But then I took it again, and I got that feeling of euphoria. Similar to the painkiller drugs that I was taking, the opiates. And so this was a miracle for me. I was like, this is fantastic. This is fresh. Oh, sorry, hold on. It's not, I don't need a prescription for it. It's cheap. I was getting it for half a kilo for $145 back then, being delivered to my work, actually, banks that I worked in. I was looking back over the dates in 2014. It was every 2 weeks one. And so it became this kind of, I'd be telling everyone about it. My friend who had a really bad back injury. He's in a wheelchair. I thought it'd be good for him for pain. So I was definitely not one of those people who'd be the keyboard warriors now, but I was definitely a proponent of it. And I thought it was a fantastic thing.
At that time, did you consider yourself as having a drug problem or substance abuse issues?
No, I booze and always been a bit of a binge drinker. Never really a daily drinker, but definitely when I do, I love going out, love partying, love being social. Growing up in Ireland, we spend a lot of time in bars. It's just a culture. You have a local bar where you go meet your friends, christening, weddings, funerals. Someone gets married, someone gets divorced, you're just going to have a pint. So that culture is just deep rooted in ourselves, and it's definitely drank since I was about 13. I think I had my first drink, big thing of whiskey. Stole a bottle of whiskey from one of the neighbors. Me and my friend Scott were walking his dog and he didn't drink. And we opened up a cabinet looking for dog food, and it was like gold. It was just like all these gifts that he'd been given from all his clients. It was a CPA, and it was just whiskey and vodka. And so, oh, sweet. So I think from 13, 14, 15, I just loved to experiment. So did lots of ecstasy back in the 90s, gone on the raves around Europe, drank a fair bit. Didn't do much cocaine there because we didn't have enough money, but took acid. Loved smoking weed, hash, because we didn't get like proper weed in Ireland. And then I discovered reggae, all these different, and link it to music as well in a lot of ways, to discovering of music, to discovering of the Doors, Pink Floyd, dropping acid. Just finding, growing up with a group of friends, and it didn't seem like it was a problem until probably into my 20s, into my 30s. So I think for me with Kratom, I think the booze, and then later when I wanted to drink a little bit more, I started doing cocaine. So that seemed like the big issues for me. That kind of led me to go rehab in 2019. But I just say this because this all masked the Kratom use and what it was doing.
So you went to official rehab program in 2019?
May 2019, I went in for what I thought was just for booze and blow. Went in, and I even bought a bag of Kratom in with me because I didn't think it was a big deal. Bought a bag of Kratom in, and the guy, I remember, he was like going through the bags and checking in, and he said, "What's this?" I was like, "Oh, it's Kratom." He's like, "You can't bring that in." And I just didn't understand. I was like, "Why not?" I had not stopped since I started taking it in 2014 all the way to 2019. I'd never stopped. I'd missed a delivery a couple of times, and I'd get sweats, and I didn't realize that they were body sweats. I thought it was just a nervous sweats from being anxious, looking for delivery, and put two and two together. And so it was only the first night, didn't sleep a wink. Second night, didn't sleep a wink. And then I realized, because I've been drinking and doing blow, but I didn't have a withdrawal. I wasn't like a daily drinker, so I didn't have this shake from drinking. And so it was Kratom. I was withdrawing from Kratom in the rehab. And they sent me in to see the psychiatrist that was on. And I told him what it was and knew what it was. I wasn't too sure. And he suggested that I go on Suboxone. He said he was the one to put me on Suboxone for 6 months or a year, like a long-term kind of Suboxone plan. And so I just wanted anything to sleep. So I remember taking the Suboxone the first day and then the second day, then feeling it felt to me as strong or maybe a little bit stronger than the Kratom. And so then my first AA meeting then, so I was going to AA meetings in the morning, every morning at 7 a.m. And I think I just had a fire lit in me for sobriety. I was like, I don't want to come out of here after 30 days in this rehab treatment and have to take Suboxone. That was what I was thinking. And so I slowly tapered off. Took it for a week, I think, and then tapered off for 4 weeks. So when I came out, I was stone cold sober, ready to hit the sober life. But that's not what happened, because in the back of my head, I knew there was one bag of Kratom that I hadn't thrown out, and my girlfriend at the time didn't know about. It was in a drawer in the kitchen. And to get out, and I go straight for a took Kratom again. First few hours I got out, I didn't drink again. I've never done cocaine again. Didn't drink again for a couple of years, or for a year or so. But I was taking back to Kratom daily. And then that's when I realized, oh, okay, this is a major problem here in my life. So since 2020, I stopped a couple of times, but it really came to a head. I'm going to just jump forward a little bit, because this is where I'm really seeing the effects of it mentally, physically. So I went home to Ireland in Christmas 2022. Went home for 3 weeks, worked from home, and I brought a kilo of Kratom with me. So packed it into protein powder and my clothes, brought it back and used that and drank a fair bit when I was back. And I'd gotten a hernia. So I needed to get surgery for a hernia in February. So anyway, December, Ireland with friends, drinking in Kratom all the time. And it's just, I wasn't present for my family. So I got back in January, annoyed at myself. I wanted to stop again, go back into AA, and had the hernia surgery. And then I couldn't exercise. It was painful. And I just got in a funk. And so I wasn't going to the office. I was working from home. So February, March, April, May, those months, it was probably 3 or 4 months of isolation. So working from home, not really going out, not going to meetings, and taking a little bit more and more Kratom. I wasn't drinking, but I realized I just put on a little bit of weight. I was just so sick of looking at myself, and it's just it stopped working. I was only taking it so I wouldn't feel it leave. I was taking probably 40 to 50 grams of the powder, and I was just stone cold depressed. And it's May, June, I think it was around June, I was like, okay, I need to stop this. So I looked to see maybe I go back to the rehab. Maybe I got to a detox. Maybe I don't know what to do. So I was searching around that time in June. And that's probably when I found Good Pod, Dopey. And I remember I was like, okay, I have to get out of this myself. I remember downloading a couple of audiobooks. What's his name? David Goggins, motivational speaker, lunatic, actually, absolute lunatic. And so I just started, get up in the morning and I'm like, okay, I'm going to try and get this out, try and lose a bit of weight, try and exercise, try and get out of the house. The hernia pain was gone down a lot. And I think I was telling myself I needed Kratom because of the hernia pain, but I didn't. I just needed it because I needed it. And so I walking, listening to a podcast over and over again. There was one guy, he was a timer. I remember his episode really hit me. Mike, he really hit me. He was talking about addiction as the narrowing of all the things you like, or the narrowing of joy or in your life. And that little sentence that he had jumped out, because that's what was happening to me. So I started listening to the podcast, and then I was so fucking depressed and sick of it that I had gotten all the way down to enough for a couple of days, maybe. So I had a baggie left, Ziploc bag left, and I tapered myself down a little bit. I don't remember the numbers, but I said, okay, I just do a little bit less every day for a couple of weeks. And I was like Forrest Gump. It was foggy. It was summer in San Francisco, super foggy, cold. And I get up in the morning because I couldn't really sleep that much. And I just go walking around the Galway Park or down to the beach, borrowing neighbors' dogs. If someone needed their dog walk, I'd be like, let me walk the dog down to the beach, listening to that podcast and Goggins. And then I had one bag left. So I was like, okay, I'll just use this over the weekend. It was probably, I don't know, 10, 20 grams. It was like a quick, fast taper. But I think in listening to Goggins and the exercise and just to be able to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And also the first episodes of your podcast, it was like, okay, people are going through exactly what I'm going through. I didn't have booze in my system. There was no other drugs in my system. So it was solely focused on Kratom. So it was a little bit easier just to hone in on, wow, what the issues were. But my hair was falling out. I went to the doctor and she did a lot of blood tests. I was anemic. Iron levels were low. Kidneys weren't doing well. Heart rate was really high when I was walking, trying to run, but it was like, I get a little bit of exercise-induced asthma. I just wasn't in a good place. And so the change was quick and profound. I started doing stuff that I used to do when I was in AA and active in the program. And so I started writing gratitude lists in the morning, not sending them to anyone, just writing them down. I thank God I had just some gabapentin in the house and some trazodone that I had from, I don't know, the surgeries or something that were from, I don't even know, they might have even gone off. But I remember gabapentin was handy for during the day when I was working, and the trazodone was helpful because sleep in the first week was just a godsend. Getting 5 hours of sleep just was great. But I could start to see after about a week or two, I was like, fuck, this could be like a nearly 10-year use. Like I could start to see that I'm going to have a bit of space from it. So I'll be posting every day, Reddit chat, and then finding dopey meetings was great as well. There was like faces, and there was a community there. People struggling with the same stuff. Yourself, no, me, Cassandra, Simone, like all these people coming through and so welcoming. Rob and Lauren, I remember up in Canada, super welcome. And then some people didn't know what it was. Some people were like heroin addicts, and it was funny joking because it was like this hippie heroin that we've been taking. And just to put it in perspective, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's hard and it's dark, but it's not fentanyl, or it's not heroin, or it's not, I'm not on some of the harder stuff as well. So still,
It's a substance you can do for 10 years, blink, and have a decade go by.
Yeah, 100%. I didn't worked the whole way through. Had a relationship the whole way through. Traveled back home to Ireland. Did triathlons. Was active, but I could see what I thought it was like. Oh, I'm getting a bit older. I'm not exercising as much. I'm slowing down. It wasn't. It was the kratom. It was sucking the life out of me over the years. And it was just when I stopped drinking had a bit to do with that too. But kratom was. It definitely. I'm fairly outgoing and fairly driven. I like to have goals and set goals. That kind of faded away a lot over those last few years of using. I used to be out and active, but there was a softening around the edges, and then there was a kind of a blasé feeling that I had. And I was just thinking, and then so kilo a month, 30 to 40 grams, up to 50 grams a day, probably. And so didn't seem like a lot at the time, but when I look back now, just the mass that I was putting on my system was just so much roughage. So I think it was after probably a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks when the body withdrawals left, the sweats, and I could sleep again. And then it was this kind of anhedonia that came over me, this like grayness. And I was prepared for that because I knew it was coming. And so I just jumped in. It was funny listening to fucking David Goggins. He'd be doing all this stuff. No, I wasn't running 100-mile marathons or doing any of this stuff as well. I would walk, and I wanted to walk and then jog and then run. And I think it was 2 weeks in, I was like, okay, I've been doing triathlons for years. I was like, okay, I'm going to sign up, and if I sign up, pay for it, put it in the future. I was in Santa Cruz. It was a beautiful place. I was like, okay, put that in the future and do it. And that's a goal. So it was put that in place to stop a relapse. Because I knew if I took a little bit, I'd be back doing a kilo a month. So I signed up for that.
How far out was that?
That was probably 2 weeks out. That was a month, basically. It was that was 35 days, I think.
And then when was the race? How much time do you have to train for it?
Probably 2 weeks after that. So no time, really. I knew I'd be able to do it. I'm a decent swimmer, and the biking and the running is not too bad, but I wasn't the fastest race that I ever done in my life, and I was hurting the day after, but I drove down on my own to Santa Cruz, got a little Airbnb. And it's funny, I ended up staying with this priest, right? It was like a spiritual experience, actually. Just rented this Airbnb. I was like, I'm going to do it for myself. This is a kind of gift to myself of getting over a month. And so I get down there, and there's this priest. His house has all this priest memorabilia. And I walk in, it's the biggest pit bull I've ever seen, this huge meat-headed pit bull. Jesus, they didn't go together. This super nice, deep, thoughtful priest. And I was in Zoom calls with a guy in Germany, I think, and talking about theology. And then this big pit bull came out. And so he wanted a dog. He went to the pound, and he seen this pit bull that was going to be put down the next day. So he just got it. No experience with pit bulls. And the pit bull even had these big kind of like fighting ears. He told me this as I'm head to head, the pit bull, like giving it a big old snuggle. So anyway, I get up in the morning to go and do the race, and he was making sandwiches. He was going out to feed the homeless people. Just lovely man. And so he gave me a little sandwich for a race. So I went out and did it nice and slow. But I was so happy to be clean and be able to swim in the ocean and to hear the sea lions barking, and just, it was all foggy as well. So it was misty, it was mystical. And it was just, that to me was, it's sometimes I think about having a path. There's one path that's going to take you to to a good place, and he's on a path that's going to be shady, or it's going to be a little bit slippery. What do they say in AA? It's like keep away from slippery people and slippery things. And so I wanted to keep healthy on a healthy path. And it just reinforced it. It was like, okay, done it. It was fun. I enjoyed it. It was Santa Cruz. And it was like, it was locked. I think from that moment, it was like, okay, I'm in. I'm doing this. I'm not going back. I have like nearly a placeholder.
So what are some of the support systems you have in place now to keep you on this path?
Now, so I reached out to the guy who ran the rehab that I went to because I just really loved him. He's a journalist for San Francisco Chronicle, fascinating character. He spent the same age as my dad. It's just a real spiritual kind of guru, real active in AA. I reached out to him and asked if he'd be my sponsor. And so I just met him at a meeting and I started going back. And so he said yes. And so I've been working with him for the last year. And it's great. I love him to bits. He's amazing. We have a great relationship now. So I meet with him once a week and I go to AA meetings. That dopey meeting, the dopey Kratom meeting that I met you on, that you invited me to, thank God, 14 months ago. Now I host that. And that's great because it's like once a week, it keeps me accountable, come up with some kind of writings. We'll be going through the daily reflections, but it's a Buddhism and the 12 steps, daily reflections, Dharma recovery. So pick a topic from there and chat. And like 2 weeks, there's 29 people on there, 29 people at different stages, some early on, some struggling. Ended up meeting Misha from that meeting here and didn't realize, but we're in the same area. So the two of us met up in December, went for a hike, and then fell in love. So okay, thank you for that, Charlie. So we've been in a beautiful relationship ever since. We traveled to Vietnam a few weeks ago. I traveled all around, and it was just beautiful, sober trip of tasting food, and I just really taking in the culture and the people of Vietnam. It's like I don't take these promises and gifts that I didn't think that would come true from Stockholm Kratom, but this is not what I at all expected. And so the structure's in place. AA meetings. I exercise a lot. I either swim, bike, or run like once a day. So I love run, always have, playing football. I never went back playing football again because I'm too nervous about another ACL surgery, and I'm just 46 now. So I think I hung up my boots, but I see people kicking the ball all the time. Like the World Cup is on. There's a little piece of me that wants to play again. So maybe I will, but later on the year, they play on the beach here. They play beach soccer. So maybe I'll play that, but I do try out not easy. Fit, healthy, and work is going a lot better than it was. Up early in the morning. And it's just life has a lot more hope and positivity. I try and work with other people as well, like new people in AA or new people in Kratom as well. It's just to try and just pass on kind of ideas. What I always say is latch onto something. Like for me, it was walking. It's funny. I listened to a book here. If you ever read Born to Run, it's that guy, Christopher McDougall, I think his name was. But anyway, he wrote another book, a follow-on about Crete. And one of the guys on there had this expression, solvitur ambulando, which means it is solved by walking. I just heard that today and I didn't even realize that's what I was doing. I say Forrest Gump, but just walking to me helped with those first few days, weeks, and months. Just getting out in the wind, the cold, just being outside of myself, outside of the walls, outside of where I used to use Kratom all the time, just to change the thoughts going on in my brain. Salvatore Violando. They say, I think it was Saint Augustine maybe who said it, but the whole idea is I used to refer to a problem which is solved by practical experiment, getting out of your head. And music, I listened to a shit ton of music. Went to see Billy Strings there a few weeks ago, and the gifts of like sobriety. Girl I met, I haven't met her yet, but a friend of Misha's and Dopey gave us 2 tickets to Billy Strings a few weeks ago. And Katie and Trevor were up in town as well. So we all went, and Misha's son Lino came as well. He's 18. He likes kind of rap music, but he came and he enjoyed it first few songs. But to me, knew Billy Strings, but I'd never seen him live. And that concert was mind blowing. It was like seeing bluegrass Jimi Hendrix or something. It was like insane. I'd never seen the Grateful Dead or these jam bands. But that was as close as I'd probably get. It was amazing. It was in the Greek Amphitheater in Berkeley as well.
That's quite a venue.
And he just lapped it up. He played the banjo, the fiddle. It was reminding me of like old Irish music, just jam sessions. They'll just go on. There's a guy playing the mandolin that my granddad used to play. It's a fiddle player, a couple of guitars and a bass. Just five strings up there, just blowing it up. It's amazing. So I just do a lot of music now still. I still listen to your podcast. And it's amazing to see the changes in 14 months, like how much you're doing as well, and the people you have on. And that guy that wrote a book about Quinn Craig, the girl who has a whole
the supplement line.
One thing I'll say about that though, I think I researched so much because I was looking for something to grasp onto. It was like the vitamin C supplements and magnesium. I was just looking for anything to hold on to. I don't know what worked, if anything worked. I will say it was helpful to think it worked, like a placebo effect. And maybe it did. Maybe it softened it a little bit. But vitamin C is never bad.
To be honest with you, I'm a little bit of a supplement skeptic. And I don't want to badmouth it because I know some people really believe in it. I tried a lot of the supplements. I don't think any of them necessarily helped me. And I know they do help a lot of people. If you were going to have one top tip to give to somebody about quitting Kratom, what would it be?
Just like that old Garrett Brooks song, Tomorrow Never Comes. If tomorrow never comes. Not a big Garrett Brooks fan at all, but I do that song. I would say just fucking today is the day. You know, today is the day. This week is the week. Just do it ASAP. And it didn't take for me. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to stop now. It was many times of trying. It didn't really touch on that as well. But many times relapse and many times of like, I'm not going to do it today. And then going back to the store, even telling them in the store, oh, don't serve me anymore. And then finding another store. So there's many times of that. But if you can start today, just, and even when you do start, just take a little bit less. If you take in the powder, just a little bit less and less and less. That helped me a lot because when I finally did stop completely, it wasn't as hard. It wasn't that like gut punch. And just be prepped a little bit for, here's one thing I will say for me that was helpful. I needed to, so there's a great chapter in The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg about the habit loop. Cue, routine, reward, cue, routine, reward. And for me, it was like getting up in the morning. I got straight in because I wasn't feeling good. Straight in, open the drawer, mix it with grapefruit juice, and I'd feel better straight away. Which is the first thing when I got up in the morning, before coffee, before anything. And that's when I started just going for a walk, like the Forrest Gump walks. Put on shoes, head straight out the door. And so that if you can change that kind of loop as well. But also then I needed something to substitute. I was like, okay, the serotonin and the feeling that I get from using Kratom is going to be gone. I'm going to be depressed. I'm going to have gray episodes. So just exercise, walking, nature, all that. Is my connection stable? So anyway, connection, wildlife, connection. I was looking at the Wi-Fi. Walking, exercise, nature. If you want to do AA, if you want to do refuge recovery, but do something. Do the Dopey podcasts are fantastic. Listen to the Dopey podcast. Eat a little bit better. Just surround yourself with people who know about it. Also, one more thing is, what's the expression called? Burn the boats, burn the ships. So tell people, because my friends didn't know for years. My friends did not know. Family didn't know. It was a secret. And so I remember when I told a friend who's actually crashing with me now as well, he had no idea. And so that whole thing when you tell people you're using and you want to stop, out yourself a little bit and you just put yourself on watch. It's a bit of an Amber Alert. So tell people, get ready for a little bit of a grayness. So substitute it with something if you can. If you play the guitar or any instrument, get back into it. just fucking laugh a little bit. I think comedy is a huge part of recovery as well. Just being able to laugh at how crazy we were or are with the Kratom. Like, I just look at myself bringing a kilo across international lines, getting caught, pulling it out and asking me, and just lying and said it was protein powder. Me having protein powder, like in a bodybuilder and tiny little fella. Make any sense, but just the madness of it as well. So just being able to laugh at the craziness that we did as well. One thing I did though, I wrote down in a book the withdrawals and how bad I felt. I wrote that down because I wanted to remember it. So that helps too. Just to glance back at it every once in a while, like the sweats, the fucking darkness, the goals just being washed away, thinking I was going to be on it for the rest of my life and being happy with that. Not being happy, but being okay with that. So,
I have to say, it's amazing. You and Misha are our first love story. She was on episode 21, and
I think actually when she was on episode 21, I think I remember hearing it, and I remember reaching out to her to just say it was beautiful to hear your story. I think that's maybe what triggered this chat and meeting up, and then we ended up going for a hike over in Marin. It was beautiful. But so there you go, Charlie, full circle. Because the Kratom Sobriety podcast, and then there's the Kratom dating side that you have, the matchmaker.
All right. Is there anything you'd like to close with, wrap this up?
Just if you're struggling, just come into the Dopey meetings and talk about it. Listen to Charlie's podcast. It's fantastic. And then just come in and say hello. That's one thing I'll say. Come in if you're struggling. You're listening now and you've been using for a while and you want to stop. Just even if you're still using, come into the Dopey podcast and say hello. Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. 7 p.m.
And 3 o'clock on Sundays, Eastern too, I believe.
3 o'clock on Sundays, exactly. Yeah, because doing the 3 o'clock on Sundays, and that's a great way too. Is come in and say hello. You don't have to be clean and sober. You don't even have to have a plan to get it, but it's good just to chat and hear the stories. Some funny people in there as well. So whatever, you'll get a laugh or you'll tell us to go and pound sand.
And then Dopey has meetings 3 times a day, 7 days a week, at least, Zoom meetings.
And there's great people in there, great people, different styles. There's a couple of different Dharma recovery meetings, which are nice to learn about meditation and different gratitude practices. I've learned so much about just knowing how to pause just through some of the Dopey meetings. Been really helpful. And if you're single, Charlie will set you up with someone.
I cannot promise that, but yeah, please listen to the podcast. Thanks a lot. That's a joy to have you on, Dave. And
thank you, Charlie. I have to say thank you. Seriously, I remember because I was just like walking around the park like with a headless chicken. And if it wasn't for the podcast, I might be still walking. It'd be 14 months of walking. It would really be like an Irish Forest Gump. Maybe I'd be in Mexico right now, or probably in Argentina actually for a while.
And yes, and safe travels. I know you're heading back home this fall, and you don't have to bring Kratom with you.
Exactly. This has happened. I don't have to cross international lines with an illegal substance. So
yeah,
if there's no bailing me out, Charlie, had it been a couple of years ago, I would have been calling with, do you know this guy? Is this your kilos?
I'm glad you avoided all the international incidents there. So
me too. All right, Charlie, thanks for asking me. It's great to see your face as well. And I'll see you at the Kratom meeting, hopefully, next week or this week.
Okay, thank you.
Kratom in the headlines. What is up, Kratom quitters? This is Jacob, and I'm here to bring you all this week's Kratom in the Headline segment. All right, so for this week, we've got an article from The Guardian entitled The Wellness Drink for Sober People That Some Say They Can't Stop Drinking. So this is about the Feel Free Classic kava kratom drink. So I'll just refer to it as the kava kratom drink moving forward. But essentially, it highlights a gentleman who, when he stopped drinking alcohol, he wanted an alternate beverage for like special occasions like weddings or birthdays or something like that. He saw Feel Free on Instagram, and essentially he started by drinking it at special occasions. He liked how it made him feel. Essentially, that progressed to drinking a full bottle a day, then two, then three. We all know how this goes. And it talks a bit about him talking about how at night he would say he wasn't going to do it. And then the next day by noon, he would be sick with the withdrawals and he'd be headed to the store. Like all of us can relate to, probably. So this article also features one of our co-hosts, Jasmine. Jasmine, who's been on the podcast and told her story. She had been doing a lot of recovery work and doing some things in the sober community around her previous addiction to alcohol. And she actually had to come out to her community from there to explain how she had struggled with Feel Free. And she talks a lot about that in her episode, which you can go back and listen to if you want. Essentially, this article just really gets into the specifics around the experience for both Jasmine and the other gentleman. They highlight the creator of Feel Free, and they talk to a scientist at the University of Florida as well. And they just talk about some of the marketing practices of Feel Free and how it's marketed as a wellness product. But if you want my opinion, it is a addictive substance that many people have come on here and talked about. In any event, it's a good article. It's probably a 10-ish minute read for our guests and our listeners that have struggled with Feel Free. I think you'll probably enjoy it. And if you want to hear more about Jasmine's story and read up on her experience in the article, that's in there as well. So that is Kratom in the headlines for this week. I hope you all keep it Kratom free.
Hello, this is Resource of the Week, and this is Charlie. And I want to share a tool that you can find online to find treatment. It's called the Treatment Atlas. It's a service of Shatterproof. Friend of the podcast, Grant, works there. And I was excited when I was reviewing this today that one of the substances that you can search on that platform for is Kratom itself. I did a search for a random California city for within 250 miles of that city, and it came up with over 500 places that say explicitly that they treat Kratom. This resource right now covers 12 states. I believe eventually they want to make this nationwide in all 50 states. And the vision of it is to try to make navigating, finding a treatment center based on your insurance or your lack of insurance, your location, and other factors to make it easier, to make it more, remove barriers. So it's free. It doesn't look like there's an app for it. It's a web-based tool. Google Treatment Atlas or look in the show notes to find a link to it. And if you're in a position where you've tried everything, you've done cold turkey, you tried tapering, you tried the old Airbnb trick cabin in the woods for 10 days, traveled overseas to a country where they don't sell Kratom, and you're just hitting a dead end, it is legitimate to go to a treatment center. And I know not everybody can afford it, unfortunately, and there are some public accessible detoxes and treatment centers. And so hopefully that's an option where you live. So check this resource out. And until next time, keep it Kratom free.